My brother got full college tuition. I got silence. At graduation, I took the mic. I exposed years of favoritism and revealed a success they never saw coming. The audience cheered. My parents' faces turned pale. Then I dropped the final truth and walked away. If you'd asked anyone in my family, they would have told you I was the quiet one, the one who figured things out on her own. The truth is, they never gave me the chance to be anything else. I'm Sophie Dalton, 25 years old now, living in a downtown apartment in Denver, Colorado. But I grew up in Tempe, Arizona, in a perfectly average two-story house with beige walls, neatly trimmed bushes, and neighbors who waved politely. From the outside, it looked like a happy middle-class home. Inside, things were different. My parents, Greg and Janet Dalton, weren't cruel. Not in any way that shows up on the surface. My dad was a real estate agent, always on his phone, always talking numbers. My mom worked as a librarian, quiet, orderly, always setting things just right. Then there was my younger brother, Ethan. He's 3 years younger than me, but in my parents' eyes, he was always the star of the show. Ethan got piano lessons, basketball camp, and every version of the iPhone the day it came out. My Christmas presents? Clearance scarves. 1 year, socks. Once, when I asked for a sketchbook, Mom handed me an old library notebook and said, "Be creative, Sophie." She thought that was enough. Don't get me wrong, I didn't expect gold or glitter. But what I wanted more than anything was to be seen. Really seen. Like someone was proud of me. But my parents never had space for that. They were always focused on Ethan. He has real potential, they'd say. Sophie will figure things out. That was their favorite line. I learned early not to ask for much. I did my schoolwork quietly, got decent grades, and kept to myself. At school, I was the kid who always turned in her assignments on time and stayed out of trouble. At home, I became invisible. There was one person who didn't treat me like an afterthought, my Grandpa Walter. My mom's father. He lived 2 hours north in a small wooden cabin near Prescott, surrounded by tall pines and clean, crisp air. Every summer, I'd spend a week with him. Those were the best days of my childhood. Grandpa Walter was a retired school principal, firm, but kind. He'd spend hours sitting on the porch with me, telling stories and listening like what I said mattered. "You've got fire in you, kiddo," he'd tell me. "Let it burn the world bright." I clung to those words like a lifeline. Things truly changed my senior year of high school. Ethan was a freshman, already being praised for joining debate club and pulling straight BS, which in our house was considered solid leadership potential. I, on the other hand, was working hard in robotics club, acing my AP computer science class and building websites for small local businesses. But no one noticed. Not until I brought home a letter from Claremont University, a private school in Colorado. I'd been accepted into their tech entrepreneurship program. I was so excited, I thought I might explode. That night at dinner, I sat at the table with my acceptance letter practically burning a hole in my hand. I waited for a pause in conversation, and when I found it, I said, "I got into Claremont. Full tech program." There was silence for a beat. Then Mom said, "Oh, that's nice, honey. Just nice." 10 minutes later, Ethan walked through the door holding an envelope. "I got in too," he yelled. "Claremont's political science track." Dad jumped up like the couch had shocked him. "We knew you'd make us proud," he said, pulling Ethan into a hug. Mom was crying. Champagne came out of the fridge like they'd been waiting for this moment. And me? I just sat there, still holding my envelope, still waiting. Eventually, I asked quietly, "So, how's this going to work? For tuition?" That's when Dad got serious. "Look, Sophie, we've only saved enough for one of you. And honestly, Ethan's path is a bit more structured. Politics, law school, solid outcomes. We think it makes sense to invest in him." Mom tried to soften the blow. "You're so independent anyway, Sophie. You'll figure something out. Maybe some loans. Or community college for a year first." I felt the ground vanish beneath me. Everything I'd done, every hour spent learning code, every weekend I worked on freelance sites, all those sleepless nights meant nothing. I was back up. Not even that. I was the one they gambled could survive without help.
I didn't cry that night.
I waited until my bedroom door was closed. Then I let the tears fall until my chest ached. It was the deepest betrayal I'd ever felt. Not because of the money, but because of the message. You're not worth it. But something happened inside me, something I still can't fully explain. That night, staring at the ceiling with my pillow soaked, I made a promise to myself. I was going to Claremont. No matter what. I would pay for every class, every book, every meal. I didn't care if it took me 10 years. I would get my degree. And when I stood on that graduation stage, I wanted them in the crowd, forced to see me succeed without them. I called that the night my revenge was born. Not the loud kind. Not the shout-in-their-face kind. Mine would be quiet.
Strategic.
The kind of revenge that makes people realize they underestimated you far too late. The next morning, I got up early and made a list. Scholarships, loan applications, side gigs. I found 2 jobs before summer ended, working nights at a local diner and picking up web design contracts from small business forums. I applied to 37 scholarships. I got 4. Not full rides, but enough to cover my first semester. When I packed for college, it wasn't with the help of movers or a shopping spree at Target. It was me, folding secondhand clothes into 2 suitcases and tossing a coffee maker into the trunk of my old sedan. My parents didn't even walk me to the car. Just waved from the porch. "Good luck," Dad called out. "Text us when you get there." I didn't text. That drive to Colorado? It was long, quiet, and full of doubts. But I reminded myself of Grandpa Walter's words, "Let it burn the world bright." And I knew I'd have to create that fire myself. So, that's how it began. The girl no one bet on, quietly getting ready to change everything. And this was only the start. Starting college without a safety net is like standing at the edge of a cliff with nothing but duct-taped wings. You either figure out how to fly or fall hard. I was determined to fly. Claremont was beautiful. Snow-capped buildings, clean air, students with shiny backpacks, and voices full of confidence. But for me, it wasn't the dream beginning everyone else seemed to be having. My apartment was 30 minutes from campus by bus. I shared it with 4 other girls in a creaky old building where the heat barely worked, and the walls were thin enough to hear arguments through. My room had space for a mattress and a folding table. That was it. But I didn't care. I had a key, Wi-Fi, and a door that closed. That was more than enough. I worked nights at a 24-hour diner off campus. Greasy plates, endless coffee, and customers who rarely tipped. On weekends, I took website gigs from small businesses, bakeries, plumbers, even a yoga instructor with a cat. I coded while eating instant noodles, sometimes falling asleep at my desk with a half-written JavaScript function blinking back at me. Claremont's tech entrepreneurship program wasn't easy, especially when you're sleep-deprived and running on gas station coffee. But I showed up. Every day. I sat in the front row, asked questions, and turned in every assignment early. My professors noticed. One in particular, Professor Ellen Marlowe, a startup founder turned lecturer, pulled me aside after class one day. "Your market analysis on small-town e-commerce? It's better than some of my graduate students' work," she said. "What's your story?"
I didn't know what to say at first.
Most kids my age didn't have one. But I told her. Not everything, just enough to make her nod with understanding. "Keep going," she told me. "The way you think, it's not taught, it's earned." That little sentence stuck with me. Despite all the exhaustion, my grades stayed perfect. Straight A's. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell Ethan. They weren't asking. Their calls had stopped after the first month. Occasionally, I'd get a text from Mom that said, "Hope classes are good." I never knew if she meant it or if she was just checking off a box. Meanwhile, Ethan was thriving. Claremont's political science program seemed to suit him just fine. I saw pictures on social media, him at fraternity parties, ski trips, study groups where everyone wore matching hoodies. In the photos, he looked relaxed, well-fed, confident. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I just noticed the contrast. It made me work harder. By my second year, my side hustle had become something bigger. I wasn't just building websites anymore. I had a name, a logo, and clients emailing me directly. I called my little company Sparkside Digital. It was simple, but professional. I charged flat rates and specialized in helping small-town shops go online. My client list grew from 5 to 15. The extra income allowed me to drop one of my jobs and focus more on school and my business. I was finally breathing, still busy, still stretched, but breathing. And then came a new challenge, group projects. I got paired with a few classmates for a startup simulation in my entrepreneurship class. Most of them were nice enough, but one guy, Derek, clearly didn't think much of me. He interrupted me often, questioned my ideas, and once said, you don't have to overcompensate just because you didn't go to prep school. That night, I cried in the bathroom stall for 10 minutes. Then I went home, rewrote the entire project proposal from scratch, and handed it in early. We got an A. Derek didn't say a word after that. Around that same time, I met Tasha, my new roommate. She was a transfer student majoring in finance, and she noticed I never ate real meals. "You can't live on peanut butter crackers and cereal, Sophie," she said one night, handing me a bowl of pasta. From that day on, we had a system. I helped her with presentations, and she cooked for both of us. We became each other's support system. My first real college friendship. One night, while doing homework on the living room floor, she asked, "Do your parents know how hard you're working?" I paused.
No.
"They probably assume I'm fine. They told me I'd figure it out, remember?"
That's brutal, she said.
"It's life," I shrugged. By junior year, my business was bringing in nearly $1,800 a month, enough to keep me afloat, and even send some money to Grandpa Walter, whose health was starting to decline. I visited him whenever I could. Those trips reminded me why I was doing this. "You're becoming everything they couldn't imagine," he told me one afternoon while we sat on his porch. That's what scares people. But don't stop. Ever. Claremont held an annual pitch competition called the Innovation Sprint. Top students pitched their business ideas to investors and local entrepreneurs. The winner received $25,000 in seed money and a direct internship offer from a top firm. It wasn't just about the money. It was recognition. A spotlight. I applied. Professor Marlowe mentored me through the application and pitch process. We worked for weeks, refining my business plan, creating projections, even building a live demo. I practiced my pitch until I could recite it in my sleep. The night before the semifinals, I barely slept. I thought about quitting, about what my parents would say if I failed. But I heard Grandpa Walter's voice in my head, clear as ever. Let it burn the world bright. So I walked onto that stage the next morning, chin up, hands only slightly shaking. I told the judges about small towns left behind in the digital age, about Sparkside's mission to empower them with affordable online tools. I showed them real results, real numbers, real stories. They listened. When they called my name as one of the final 3, I didn't cry. I smiled. Not for them, for me. I had built this alone. But the part that caught me off guard was what happened afterward. As I left the stage, I saw someone waiting near the back of the room. It was Ethan, wearing a Claremont sweatshirt and holding a coffee. He looked unsure, like he didn't know whether to wave or hide. "What are you doing here?" I asked. He shrugged. "Someone posted about the pitch on the student forum. I came to watch."
I didn't know what to say.
Then he said, "You were incredible." It should have made me happy,
But it just confused me.
because I knew, deep down, that my journey and his were finally crossing paths again. And I wasn't sure how I felt about that yet. But I'd soon find out. Because Ethan? He was about to need my help more than he ever had before. I didn't expect to see Ethan again that soon, let alone at something like the pitch event. For years, we'd lived in the same city, gone to the same school, and barely spoken. It wasn't out of hatred, we just lived in different worlds. He had his, where everything was provided, and I had mine, where I fought for every inch. But after that pitch, something shifted. A week later, I was walking out of my data analytics class when I got a message from him. "Can we talk? It's about my thesis." I stared at the screen for a full minute. I could have ignored it. I should have, maybe. But I couldn't shake the memory of him watching my pitch with that unsure, quiet look, like he saw me for the first time. So I said yes. We met at the campus library. He looked different, less put together, more tired, like reality had finally caught up to him. My thesis is falling apart, he said, running a hand through his hair. Professor Jacobs says my research isn't strong enough, and if I don't fix it in 3 weeks, I might not graduate. I waited. He wasn't the type to ask for help, not even when we were kids. So I knew this wasn't easy for him. I need help, he finally said. I don't know how to do this. I wanted to say, where was this energy when I was eating ramen for the 3rd night in a row while you were in Paris on winter break? But I didn't. Not because I'd forgotten, but because something else had taken root in me since that night years ago when I made my silent promise. Helping him didn't mean I forgave everything, but maybe it meant I was strong enough to stand above it. So I agreed. Every evening, we met at the student union with laptops and coffee. At first, the silence between us was thick, but slowly it loosened. I helped him restructure his arguments, rewrite citations, and understand sources the way I had taught myself to. He was smarter than I gave him credit for, but also less confident than I remembered. Maybe because he was finally realizing the world wouldn't always bend for him. One night, as we wrapped up around midnight, he said, "I had no idea how hard you've worked." I didn't answer right away. Then he added, "Mom and Dad never talked about it. They just said you were doing fine on your own." I laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Fine's a funny word, Ethan. It covers a lot of pain. He looked down. I think they were wrong. About a lot of things. It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever heard from someone in my family. By the time his final submission was due, his paper was solid. I'd made sure of it. He thanked me in a quiet voice and walked off, leaving me alone at our usual study spot. I sat there a long time, thinking about everything we never talked about growing up, and how much was finally starting to surface. Meanwhile, I had my own deadlines. The final round of the innovation sprint was only days away. I was one of 3 students pitching to real investors, people with serious money and influence. My business plan for Sparkside Digital was sharper than ever. I had client data, growth charts, future projections, even a demo portal showing how I'd scale services across underserved communities. But what I didn't have was family in the crowd. I didn't expect them, but part of me wondered, would Grandpa Walter come? The night before the final pitch, I got a call from his neighbor. Grandpa had collapsed on his porch. He was stable but in the hospital. I felt like my chest had caved in. I wanted to get in the car and drive to Prescott right then, but when I called him, the first thing he said was, "You'd better not miss your moment. Grandpa, you're in the hospital. And you're at the edge of your biggest win yet," he said firmly. "Don't let my old body keep you from showing them who you are." So I went. The final pitch was in Claremont's main auditorium. Hundreds of students, professors, alumni, and guests. I stood backstage, knees weak, palms sweating. But when they called my name, I walked out like I owned the place. Because I'd earned this moment. I started my pitch with a story, my own. Not in full detail, but just enough. There are 2 types of businesses, I said, those built with capital and those built with grit. I didn't have savings or investors. I had drive. And that drive helped me build a company that now serves 22 clients across 3 states, all without a dime of family support. I showed numbers, testimonials, even a new partnership with a small-town chamber of commerce. I spoke with confidence, not just because I was prepared, but because I had lived every word of what I was saying. When I finished, the applause was immediate. That evening, I got the call. I'd won. The prize? $25,000 in funding, mentorship from a national accelerator program, and a job offer from Trionyx Ventures, a top tech firm. I was stunned. I sat on the edge of my bed staring at the phone for a full 10 minutes before texting one person. "Me? Grandpa, we did it." He replied, "You did it, Firestarter."
You.
And then came graduation week. My parents showed up 2 days before the ceremony, all smiles and polite small talk. Ethan had already told them about his thesis and how I'd helped. Suddenly, they were interested. Suddenly, I was someone worth asking about. Mom said, "We're so proud of you." Ethan told us everything. Dad added, "Really impressive what you've built." We had no idea. Of course they didn't. They never asked. But I didn't argue. I just smiled politely and let their discomfort settle in. Because what they didn't know was that at graduation, the world would know exactly who I was and exactly how I got there. Graduation morning was bright and clear, like the universe had decided to give us all a perfect day. I woke up before my alarm, heart pounding. Not from nerves, not exactly, but from knowing this day wasn't just about a diploma. It was something bigger. A moment I had waited years for. A moment I had earned. I wore a simple navy dress under my gown. Nothing fancy, but I felt powerful. The kind of powerful that doesn't come from looks or titles, but from survival. I pinned Grandpa Walter's small silver pin on the inside of my collar. He couldn't be there in person. He was still recovering at home, but he called me the night before and said, "I'll be watching online, Firestarter. Don't let him blink." I promised I wouldn't. The ceremony was held in the university's grand outdoor amphitheater. Rows of chairs filled with hundreds of graduates, their families buzzing with excitement. My name was listed in the program with a tiny asterisk next to it, Valedictorian, Innovation Champion. But no one, not even my family, knew I'd also been selected to give the student address, a last-minute surprise arranged by Professor Marlowe and the dean. When the dean called my name, I walked up to the podium to a wave of polite applause. I spotted my parents in the crowd. Front row. Ethan beside them. My mom wore that same soft-lipped smile she used when she wasn't sure what was happening but wanted to look supportive. My dad looked stiff. Uncomfortable. I kept my eyes forward. I took a breath. And then I spoke. 4 years ago, I arrived at Claremont with a suitcase full of secondhand clothes and dreams bigger than my bank account. I didn't have family funds behind me. I didn't have connections. I had loans, night shifts, and a constant question in my head, can I really do this? The audience quieted. Phones stopped clicking. I came here with a belief that my worth wasn't something I needed permission to claim. And through long nights, hard work, and building a business from scratch, I've learned that value isn't handed to you. It's proven. It's built. I glanced at the crowd. I saw my mom's mouth part slightly. My dad blinked, finally beginning to understand. I've served clients in places no one else was looking, created jobs for students like me, and learned that resilience isn't glamorous, but it's powerful. It's what carried me to this stage. And if you're sitting there wondering if you're enough, I promise you, you are. Especially if no one else tells you so. When I finished, the applause was thunderous. Not polite, not routine, but real. Then came the announcements. The dean returned to the microphone. "Sophie Dalton is not only our valedictorian," he said, "but the winner of this year's innovation sprint, founder of Sparkside Digital, and recipient of a national entrepreneurial grant. She has accepted a position at Trionics Ventures, where she'll continue her mission of empowering underserved communities through tech solutions." He paused, letting the words sink in. And today, Claremont University is proud to announce the creation of the Sophie Dalton Grit Scholarship, honoring students who succeed despite overwhelming personal challenges. Sophie has personally contributed the first $5,000 to fund the inaugural recipient. That's when the crowd rose. A standing ovation. I saw students, professors, even strangers clapping. And my parents frozen. My mom's face pale. My dad's jaw clenched. Ethan, though, he stood up, clapping with tears in his eyes. After the ceremony, everything moved fast. Strangers congratulated me. Professors shook my hand. Tasha hugged me and whispered, "They saw you. All of you." Eventually, I made my way over to my family. My dad tried to recover first. "Well," he said, his voice thin, "you've really made a name for yourself." I smiled politely. "Thanks." My mom stepped closer. "Sophie, we didn't know about the scholarships."
The jobs.
"All of it. You never asked," I said softly. They looked down. For the first time, I think they saw the truth, not just about me, but about themselves. Ethan was quiet until he reached out and gave me a hug. "You deserved all of this," he said. "Every single bit." Later that evening, there was a reception hosted by the business department. Catered food, lights strung across the courtyard, and a real sense of celebration. That was my space. My people. Professor Marlowe toasted to my journey. The dean handed me a certificate with my scholarship name engraved. And one of the guests, a young woman from the incoming class, came up to me and said, "I applied because of your story. I didn't think someone like me could make it until I read about you." That was it. Right there. The moment everything felt worth it. That night, I didn't go to the family dinner my parents had planned. I went with Ethan and Tasha and a few classmates to a quiet rooftop cafe where we laughed, ate, and watched the sun set over the city I had built myself in. My phone buzzed once, Grandpa Walter. "They see you now, Firestarter." But I always did. And maybe that's what mattered most. The people who counted? They never needed convincing. As for the rest, let them keep blinking. I'm not slowing down.